Why don't we talk about some of the ups and downs? So, I mean, some of the things we're going to talk about later is businesses having ups and downs, and I know there were some pivotal moments for you that were really interesting to hear about, where the business had some ups and downs in it.
Lots of Well, I think one of the ones that people found really interesting is that how did we go from the name Kinder Gym to Gymboree? Because we are operating now, I had maybe 8 or 9 company-owned. It fluctuated from here and there. And then we had a good 10 or 12 franchises operating under the name of Kinder Gym. And we had gone and put to the Federal Trade Commission, to the Department of Corporations to get our name trademarked, because as a franchise company, that's what you have, is your name. And it came back as generic. So now, after 5 years of business, operating under the name of Kinder Gym, name was going to be no good anymore. Well, that seemed really scary to me. How are we going to change our name and not go out of business? But in the long arm of all the difficulties that came later, changing it to Gymboree, which was just such a great name. And when we came up with the name Gymboree and we did all these great mall intercepts and held up the name and said, what does this name mean? And everybody goes, I don't know, it's got something to do with kids, and it's fun, and it's lively, and so forth and so on. We knew we'd made the right choice. So within about a couple months, nobody even remembered the name Kinder Gym. So I think probably what Mark's referring to is, even though Stuart might have seen the retail, our journey to becoming a retail company was not a straight line. And it wasn't because we planned it on our strategic long-term vision. It came because the franchise business, as much as our customers absolutely loved the business, it made their day. And they still tell me, I still run into people that tell me that they have lifelong friendships from that business. Some people even today, I saw. And the franchisees were making money too. They were doing quite well. But here's the flaw. We, as the parent company, were not going to make a business out of it. The royalties that the franchisees paid us could not sustain the cost of what it took us to make them successful. And by the time I was onto the flaw, we'd already raised a couple $1 million. We had about, I don't know, a couple hundred franchises. So when I came clean with the board and told them that, we had to come up with a new strategy. They weren't really ready for us to go gung-ho into retail at that point, when we just hadn't really been able to make the business we had work. So we tried licensing, which is a very good way to leverage a brand, because our name, we'd done all these research things, and the name, even way back then, in the early, mid-'80s, had great brand awareness. So we were able to secure, and Karen Anderson was quite involved in this part of it too, great licenses. We had Random House doing our books, and Carl Lorimer doing videos, and A&M doing our music. Big brand at that time doing clothing, and we did some formidable stuff. So we were feeling pretty high that we had been able to secure those licenses, and we were at the Toy Fair in New York, and blah, 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 and big full-page ads, and you name it. Well, how come we're not a licensed company today? How come we just had a big presentation about retail? Well, guess what? Who can imagine what happened to that strategy? No guesses? It failed. We were not a good hot license. So what do they do? What do those licenses do with you if you're not the newest kid on town and you're not, bringing in a lot of bucks? So we got passed over, and the licenses were not renewed. So we were really hurting. Our franchise strategy wasn't working. Our licensing strategy had failed. And the board's sitting there okay, guys, when the venture capitalists invest in you, it's going to have a good ending here. Hold on. But when the venture, as you know, But when the venture capitalists invest in you, they expect 10 companies, they expect 3 or 4 of you to not make it. That's just what they hope. That's what they don't hope, but that's what they know is going to happen. They're going to write you off. They hope one of you will be an Apple or a Sun Microsystem. And then the rest of you, they hope, will be 5 to 10 times their investment. What they don't want is a Gymboree. Their worst nightmare, which is that we'll just continue going on, paying our payroll, but they'll never see their money back, let alone return an investment. So, and that's what we were. We could meet our payroll, but we couldn't do much more. So then Hasbro came around and decided they wanted to buy us. So that was pretty cool. That's a good exit strategy. You go public or you get acquired. The only bad part of that was, honestly, I was afraid that some corporate vice president would figure out that I didn't know what I was doing, that I just wung it. But I figured the company would be saved, and that was the most important thing. So that was cool. Then Hasbro said, well, maybe we don't want to buy you 100%. We'll make a corporate investment, and then we'll buy you later. Okay, cool. So then we go off to New York to sign the papers. The venture capitalist, the board member, I don't know, a whole entourage was on the plane following me when I get a call from the corporate vice president of Hasbro to tell me, well, we're not part of Hasbro, are we? The deal's off. They changed their mind. So these are just a few bumps in the road. So devastated and destroyed, frankly. I thought the end of the road had come. Even though I would not give up, Gymboree was not going down on my watch, I was out of ideas. I was flattened, frankly. So I went away for a weekend, and this group over here, Nancy Bott, who held every backroom function there was, IT before it was IT, finance, payroll, HR, and Karen, who got us all that amazing press throughout the years and did about everything else. And Bud, you've already heard. And Julie Arvon, who was one of the first teachers in the 70s and then developed product for the franchise side of the business. I came back and I said to these people, while I'm gone, feel free. Get as creative as you want. Do not be inhibited by me. I'm plumb out of ideas. Come up with a strategy. It could be Gymboree vitamins. I don't care. We have
Just write
to
that
find
down.
a way.
Write that down. Next big thing. You heard it here.
Could be, you know, could be. We just needed to find our way. And I come back, and on my desk from Julie was a picture on a big poster board of a Gymboree store next to a Gymboree retail center. I mean, a Gymboree store next to a play center. And it's not that we hadn't thought about this at some point, but something about the way that was drawn and the state of mind, it was like, we got nothing to lose. So she and I sat down, we hired a whole bunch of architects until we fired them all and just came up with our own design. We thought, at this point, Gymboree play centers were not in commercial locations, they were in rented church halls, so we could finally put the gym in Gymboree. And we made it look like a basketball court. The little lines, the colored lines, and the gym lights, and it was so fun, and bleacher seating. And we called an emergency meeting of the board and Stu. They didn't know what we were doing. I just said, everybody show up at Sand Hill Road. We got something to tell you. And Julie had new product, and so we had designed some product. We had a real dog and pony show. We just went for it. And at the corporate office, U.S. Venture Partner, which was our primary lead investor, had just brought on Phil Schlane, who had been the CEO of Macy's, and he asked if he could sit on the presentation. Why not? So we did this presentation, which was really fantastic. we were an advertising agency, we would have gotten the account. But we were the real company. And when we were all done, feeling pretty smug, Phil Schlein gets up and says, remember this, Julie? You'd be crazy to invest in this company. Why? Well, one, they can't run the company they have. Two, they don't know the first thing about retail. There's not a merchant around. And they were right. He was right. All of those things were true. But the next day, Stuart Muldaur called and said, get on the plane. I believe in you. Get over to Hong Kong, produce your line, and when you get back, you'll find a store. And that's the genesis of the retail. Even though Stuart saw it from the beginning, it wasn't quite in that order. So that was probably one of the toughest beginnings, Mark.
It's amazing.